Hi, how you doing? And welcome to the channel. This video is all about sonic identity for music artists. So we're going to be looking at what sonic identity is, why it's so important, and how you can go about developing and using it. Now, lots of music industry people and music industry terminology has different ways of describing what this concept is. So you may hear phrases such as artistic vision, artist identity, sonic soundscapes, and all these kinds of other ways of trying to explain some of these concepts. Now, none of these are wrong, okay, and anything that gets you thinking about what you sound like and your artistry is all fine with me. But let's just be precise here about what it is that we mean by sonic identity. So we believe that sonic identity is a separate concept all of its own and separate to your artistic voice. Now, we have already done a video on artistic voice, so if you haven't already watched that, go ahead and check it out. But we think the artistic voice can include things such as your songwriting style, your lyrics and themes and so on. And your artistic voice contributes to what your sonic identity is, but they are two different things. Your sonic identity is the actual sound of your recordings and music. This is your signature sound, okay? It's the authentic artistic vision communicated through your final productions. What do those actually sound like, and how does it identify you as an artist? It's also not your brand either. Your brand evolves from all of these concepts of your artistry and music. Okay, so it's not your brand. This is separate to your brand. I think from lots of the work we do with independent artists, it's quite clear that you generally understand the concept of what we're talking about when we discuss sonic identity in this way. But it's also quite clear that it's very underdeveloped, and there's various reasons for that, which I might get onto later. But before we get to that, I just want to explain why sonic identity is so important for emerging independent artists. Well, let's start by thinking in terms of music artistry. So yes, having a sonic identity is a key part of artistic endeavour. So part of your journey to becoming a great music artist should involve you developing and evolving your sonic identity. And I think most music artists, when this is explained, kind of totally understand that that should be a vision for what they're trying to achieve. However, this thinking only really looks at the concept from the artist's perspective, from the perspective of the artist's personal musical development. What it doesn't acknowledge is that there's a whole nother reason as to why it's really important for an emerging independent artist to have a sonic identity. And that reason is that it's very difficult for an artist who's just starting out to build an audience and a fan base from scratch when they don't have a sonic identity. If your goal is to monetize your music and build a fan base and an audience and so on, then you have to have a sonic identity. So think about this. When someone hears a track of yours that they like, they're going to go and check you out. And what they're hoping for is that they're going to find more tracks that have a similar sonic identity to the one that they've already heard. They're going to want to hear more of the same kind of thing. Not that it needs to be identical, in fact you don't want it to be identical, but they want something that's part of a body of work, a coherent and consistent sound across your music that they can get into, because that's what makes you identifiable as an artist. It's something that they can engage with, and it's the way that you build gravity around you as an artist. It takes more than just one track to build a strong connection between an artist and an audience. So the listener does not want to go to the rest of your music and find that it's all got a different feel and sound and sonic and vibe. What they want is something consistent and coherent across your body of work. So as an artist, what you don't want is the listener to think, oh, I like that one track, but the rest of the music, wasn't really my kind of thing. What you want is for them to get into you as an artist, and the way that you do that is that your music across your body of work has some depth to it. So what you need is a whole series of single releases that all fit this consistent sonic identity and help create that bond with the audience and the artist. Just a quick side note here, because I mentioned about creating a body of work with your coherent sonic identity across it. It's great when you're creating your music to think in terms of bodies of work, even an album, but don't release an album until you have an audience large enough to be receptive to you releasing it. So for most emerging independent artists, it is way better that you're releasing a series of singles that all support your sonic identity. Now you can evolve your sonic identity, so it can change over time, but what you want to be doing is thinking that you're creating a body of work, okay, so a whole series of single releases, and they should all be reflecting that same sonic identity. When you come to your next cycle of music, your next phase, creative phase, well then you can change it slightly or improve it. You should be working on these things, and it's good that your audience can hear that you're growing and doing new things, but just don't stray too far while your audience is still very small or non-existent. Okay, the bigger your audience becomes, then the more freedom that you kind of have to try different things and different sonics. So having a strong and clear sonic identity is one of the first steps to audience building, because it means people can engage with you as an artist and what you're all about and get into your music beyond people just liking one track of yours. Now, in addition to this, having a strong sonic identity is also going to help you get support from the wider music industry itself. So if, for example, one of your singles has done quite well and you've got a little bit of support, maybe from radio or playlists or blogs, that kind of thing, and then you release your next single, if it has a similar sonic identity and it all works to support what you are about as an artist, then it's much more likely that they will also then support that next single. Okay, if it doesn't, if your sonic identity is completely different, then you're kind of starting from scratch again, trying to find people who want to support what you're doing. Also, when you can show that you've got a series of singles that are coming out that all meet this identity and are all part of a body of work and kind of help support what you are as an artist, that shows that you're kind of serious about what you're doing, you're building something, and people can see that there's this trajectory and a momentum that you can build. Okay, so the sonic identity is not just about the audience themselves. You need to also think about the fact that the wider music industry and the people that you're trying to get support from are also really part of your audience. So if you're only going to take away one piece of advice from this video, let it be this. Realise that your release strategy starts with your music creation. All right, your music and the quality of your music, the choice of songs, your artistic voice, your sonic identity and your productions, okay, they will all set a ceiling on the level of success that you're going to be able to achieve, regardless of how much more campaigning and marketing and promotion you're going to do. What's clear to us though, from having worked with so many independent artists, is that sonic identity is very underdeveloped and is even under-considered. Now, there's a couple of common mistakes that we see. One is that artists try to show too much versatility. So they kind of want to be able to demonstrate that they're capable of different things, or even that they're trying different things out all the time. And sometimes maybe the temptation is that that will help attract a wider audience. But the reverse is true. By having lots of different styles and trying different things like this, and releasing that sort of music, is it makes it difficult for an audience to identify what it is that you're all about as an artist. So it makes it harder for you to grow an audience that way. The second thing that we see is that artists try to focus on just being good. Now, obviously that's quite subjective, what being good means, but I think artists focus on trying to be objectively good. So that involves them trying to be professional in their sound. So they all focus on great quality studios and expensive microphones and having really well technically engineered final productions. Okay, so there's never enough creative production going on with their final recordings. That's a very common mistake that we see. I think that also goes to highlight that there's a little bit of a misunderstanding between what an engineer does and what a producer does. And your sonic identity will be something that's authentic to you, but it won't be something that's completely unique and never heard of before. Okay, all music kind of evolves from other things that you're influenced by and the sort of music that you're creating. Okay, but it needs to be something that's deeper than just your genre. So you can hear two artists that are in the same genre, but they'll both be quite identifiable in the differences that they have between them. Okay, so you need to try to find something of yours that is identifiable in that way that you can build an audience around. Since I've mentioned genres there, I just want to pick up on a point that I am aware lots of artists hate the idea of genres. They may feel that it's a really clumsy way to categorize what they're doing. But in reality, all music, well, all art really, is part of a journey of what's gone on before it, and then each artist brings their own thing to it, which could be something that's cultural or something in their life, or they're blending various things that have gone on before them in some way or another. Okay, so you usually are part of something else, even if it's a combination of things. All right, so you should have some idea of the sorts of genres that you fit into, and it's a good thing to do that, especially the early stages, because by having this idea of what you are, okay, that gives you something to emerge from. Okay, and it helps audiences kind of identify where your starting point is. Okay, so it is part of your sonic identity. Also, the other flip side of having no genres and wanting to just transcend all of it is that if you're trying to be everything to everybody, the result is that you can quite easily be nothing to nobody. All of these scenarios can result in music that can either sound quite generic and just sort of adhering to the expectations of the genre. Okay, that can all be at one end of a spectrum, if you like. And at the other end of the spectrum, the music can be sort of wildly experimental and sort of pure artistic in some way or another. The sweet spot really is that somewhere in between these two scenarios. So how you develop your sonic identity will kind of depend on what type of artist you are and whether you're hiring a producer or going to be producing your own music. So let's just have a little look at the scenario where you're going to hire a producer. First thing I would say is make sure you're hiring a producer and not just a sound engineer. Okay, and I mean no disrespect to sound engineering, it's a great skill, but what you want for sonic development is you need to hire a producer. So that's someone that's going to contribute to the creative part of your recordings in some way. Okay, they're going to bring something to the table creatively for you. Okay, whereas as engineer, that isn't really their role. All right, there are different types of people that you hire here to do these different types of roles. So you want a producer, not an engineer. Then you're going to need to prepare and plan for the production process itself. So firstly, you're going to need to choose songs of yours that you can use to build a great body of work and that you can create a solid sonic identity around. Okay, so you may already have an idea of what you want to sound like, and perhaps you've already got some demos that have got elements or hints of the type of sonic that you're going for, or maybe you don't. But either way, you're going to need to be able to explain to a producer what your musical and sonic vision is. Okay, it's actually quite difficult to do that. So often the best thing is that you can create playlists that will contain tracks or even elements of tracks that you like, which will help articulate what your vision is. So it could literally be that there's one small part of a track that has an atmosphere that you like, or maybe there's some drums you like on this track, or rhythm here, or some keys or guitar parts, and just little timbres that you like here and there. So build up a whole reference playlist, okay, because that's going to be really useful for a producer to kind of understand where you're coming from and what it is that you want for your music. Don't just start working with a producer hoping that they're going to magically create a sonic identity for you, all right? They're not magicians, okay? You need to guide them and discuss with them what your vision is and what you want to happen, all right? Otherwise, you run a high risk of not getting what you want from the final production process, okay? And you may end up with something that's quite bland and generic. If, on the other hand, you're not going to be hiring a producer and you're thinking of producing yourself, which lots of emerging artists do this, and clearly it's a lot cheaper, well, you still need to think about what your sonic identity is going to be, okay? So don't just assume you're going to have a sonic identity because it's your music and it's your creativity and your recordings, okay? What we tend to find is sometimes self-producing artists have comfort zones of how they're creating their music, and that can kind of prevent a little bit of creativity occurring. Also, we tend to find that self-producing artists may have music and they're creating music in a way that they feel it ought to sound. So their music can end up sounding fairly anchored in a genre of some kind and doesn't reflect something authentic and original and fresh. Another thing to watch out for if you are producing your own music is overstressing on small perfections, all right? So, for example, you may hear something in the arrangement, a tiny tweak that you want to get something just right, or one of the samples you're using isn't quite perfect and you're thinking of something else, and these will be things that will barely be noticeable to most listeners, all right? Also, you may be stressing about the perfection of the sound quality. So the microphones you're using, the equipment, EQing certain sounds and this kind of thing. Okay, and you can spend ages doing this, all right? It will never be perfect. There just comes a point at which it's fine. It will be good enough for you to release. You're much better as an independent and emerging artist who doesn't really have much of an audience yet to focus your time and your energy on the creative parts of what you're doing. Okay, try and have a sonic identity, an artistic voice, and how you can demonstrate that. Okay, what it is that you're actually doing creatively. That's what's going to help you build an audience. So however you're going to be producing your songs, okay, when you come to this part of the process, don't just drift through it thinking that your musicianship and your songs are going to be enough. Okay, there's an extra component part of this, which is your sonic identity, and it's something you need to work on. It's very unlikely that you just naturally got something. Okay, it's something you need to pay attention to. Develop your own sonic identity across a body of work and a series of single releases that's going to help build traction and momentum to what it is that you're doing and give you the best opportunity of building an audience and a fan base. All right, give us your own truth and your own spin on something. Give us your sound. Okay, if another artist comes along and starts sounding like you, it should be identifiable to us as an audience. I hope that gives you a clearer idea of how you can approach developing your music and your productions. If you found this video useful, then please let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you're getting on with your own music projects. And don't forget to give this video a like. We greatly appreciate it. We'll see you next time.